Okay, let me kick this thing off. My name is Mark Patrick. I'd like to welcome everybody to this week's or this month's call. Our special guest is Dr. Holly Lucille, and let me give you a little background about her because we have a lot of information we're going to cover tonight. She is a naturopath. She is expert on women's health issues. She has been in the health field now about 17 years, practicing as a holistic nurse until obtaining her doctorate at Southwest College of Naturopathic Medicine. She has a long list of professional accomplishments, including being president of the California Association of Naturopathic Physicians, also serving on the scientific advisory board of Enzymatic Therapy, which is a natural medicines company. In addition, Dr. Lucille is a sought-after speaker who has made numerous TV appearances and national radio appearances. She's been on shows the Discovery Health Channel, Lifetime Television for Women. She's been on Montel. She has also received Southwest College of Naturopathic Medicine's prestigious Daphne Bladen Award, hopefully I'm saying that correctly, for her commitment to naturopathic medicine, academic excellence, passion, and a loving sense of humor and a positive outlook of support. Lucille is also the recipient of the SCNM Legacy Award for her contribution to advancement and development in the field of naturopathic medicine. She is also in 2007, she was listed in Time Magazine Alternative list as one of the top 100 most influential people in America. So we have somebody here tonight that definitely knows what the heck you're talking about. Dr. Holly, did I miss anything?
I think that sounds pretty good. Thank you, Mark, so much.
Okay, first and foremost, I want to make sure everybody has a pen and paper tonight with you. So if you don't have one, please grab a pen and paper. We're going to go really, there's going to be a lot of information we're going to share with you. There's going to be things you're going to want to write down. First and foremost, I want everybody to take down two of Dr. Holly's websites. Her personal is drhollylucille.com. That's www.drhollylucille.com, drhollylucille.com. And she also has another website which is called Natrapause. That is NATRAPAUSE.com. That's www.natrapause.com. Please write those addresses down. Let's get into this. Dr. Holly, can you first of all explain to everybody what a naturopath does?
Yeah, so as a naturopathic doctor, I get that a lot because even though naturopathic medicine has been around for a long time, it's starting to get more and more known to the public. And there is, I think it's very important to identify because there's a couple different distinctions. And I should start off by saying that I do believe that there is value and benefits in all systems of medicine, whether it be Ayurvedic medicine, traditional Chinese medicine. What we know is what I call conventional medicine or allopathic medicine, what we're familiar with in our sort of insurance-based and, conventional medicine that we have in our society right now. Naturopathic medicine, there are 7 schools right now that graduate folks like me, 4-year, full year-round. I'm licensed in California to deliver primary care. So high degree of education, rooted heavily in the medical sciences, go on to understand clinical sciences, but the approach is different. I guess, Mark, the best analogy or comparison, I should say, would actually be to allopathic medicine. Very, very similar training, but the approach is different. So as in conventional medicine kind of is rooted in reductionism. So sometimes you go in and you might have an experience where you're reduced to either a diagnosis or a lab test or a sign or a symptom. And usually, unfortunately, in our modern day, it's driven then by a protocol, which is usually a pharmaceutical agent. Here, take this. In naturopathic medicine, the root is a vitalism, and that just says that in our bodies have this innate ability to heal. And if there's something going on and we're not feeling well, we just ask good questions. Hey, where's an obstacle? Where are obstacles to that process of the body healing itself? Where might there be some deficiencies? Where might there be some excesses? And then work with the body so it can work with itself. And in doing so, a couple other principles. First, do no harm. There's tons of things that we can do before drugs and surgery. And so clinical nutrition, botanical medicine. Not only can I write scripts, but, hey, I know a lot about how plants can be medicinal, and oftentimes they're safer. Identify and treat the cause. That's really important, not just suppress symptoms, but really ask good questions. So those are some of the principles that I kind of guide my philosophy by and my education by. So the approach is what's different.
Excellent. Okay, so let me get into this and tie this call into weight foremost. Explain how, what are some of the different hormones that, let's face it, we talk about in our programs about mind over matter speak, and it's in your mind, but maybe it's not all in our mind. What that goes in our body? What is it that somebody who is exercising, eating right, all meals, healthy foods, low carb, low fat, but in gear, what are some of the hormones? What are some of the things they need to watch out for, especially as they get older, and how does it affect weight? I know I threw a lot of questions at you, so feel free.
Yeah, and also, Mark, I'm getting sometimes like every other syllable. Not sure. Are you hearing me okay?
Yeah, I'm kind of getting a little bit of a breakup on this, so sometimes these lines can do that, but I'm pretty sure.
I just want to make sure I get
this call. Yeah, what it does, it usually records better than it, so you can listen to the replay on this if it is cutting out. So, kind of doing the same thing for me. I guess my question I wanted to share with everybody is this: if they're stuck in gear, what can they do to unstick them physically from a hormonal standpoint? Yes.
All right, so
what should they look
hormones
out
and weight
for?
loss, basically. I think if you're stuck in gear, here's what needs to happen. We actually need to identify and treat the cause. Where is there an imbalance? Because absolutely 100% it will get you stuck in gear, especially if you have a weight loss desire. I think in our modern day, and quite honestly, I don't care how old you are, in our modern day, it comes down to, now the thing when we talk about hormones, I think what's really important to lay out there, and Deepak Chopra, he actually, the world-renowned endocrinologist, he says it best about the endocrine system or the hormone system. You touch one strand and the whole web trembles. This is one of the most interconnected, sophisticated systems in our body. But let me tell you, in my clinical experience, and certainly with myself as a 45-year-old in menopause, it is our modern-day stressors and therefore stress hormones like cortisol that will get you stuck in gear, and it also will create a slippery slope of other health concerns, not only being overweight, that you're going to have a hard time dealing with, especially going through menopause, especially going through andropause.
Now, just touch on what andropause is, because I think a lot of men aren't really exactly sure what andropause is. We're all familiar with menopause.
Sure. Well, if you think about menopause, so menopause, I always say it's not the end of anything. It's the beginning of a lot of things for people. People live half their lives through menopause and andropause. But it does mark the end of natural fertility, and men and women, if we haven't noticed, they kind of are together in that process. There's a lot of artificial things you can do to actually create babies these days, but for the most part, natural fertility, that biological state. So menopause is written about a lot. We hear about it a lot. Unfortunately, it's pathologized a lot. Unfortunately, it's medicalized a lot, but it's a very natural process. Andropause, you're right. We don't hear about that. But andro, so those are basically, we want to look at them as male hormones. There is a decline naturally in hormones that are usually there for a biological reason to help in natural fertility. So it's a decline. And oftentimes, men will have symptoms as well as women are having symptoms, obviously, in our modern day. Men will have symptoms as far as decrease in sex drive, irritability, weight gain, moodiness, sleeplessness, and a decrease in libido.
Okay, so back to cortisol levels. Everybody's familiar with cortisol levels when they start to drop off. What about going to a traditional doctor? And I know this personally because I've gone through some of these different tests. Why is it that, say, a doctor will do a test for like a thyroid and they test for like a saliva test, a cortisol test? Am I correct in saying that? What that somebody could write down right now if they're stuck in gear that they should be doing that a traditional doctor wouldn't do?
Absolutely. I mean, first of all, it's a very, very funny thing as far as your adrenal glands and cortisol is concerned with let's just say typical Western medicine or conventional medicine. I call it conventional because traditional medicine is really more like what I've been taught to do, which is, we're not so reductionistic. We're just, hey, let's basically think some things through. But there is so an ICD-9 code it's basically an insurance code, right? But it's a diagnosis code. There really is no diagnosis code for adrenal dysregulation, or we've heard your adrenals are burnt out, or other things, like my adrenals are fried, or adrenal fatigue. There really isn't. The only way that you're going to get attention from a regular doctor, for lack of a better term, is that if you have Addison's disease, all right, which is one end of the spectrum, or if you have Cushing's disease, which is the other one. That would be like going into your ophthalmologist's office and your ophthalmologist going, you're not blind yet, so we're really not going to actually take any action here. Okay, so in the Western typical conventional medical world, the adrenal glands, cortisol is not really paid attention to a lot. And so, what does somebody need to do if they're stuck in gear? If you can go to www.naturedoctor.com. You can put in your zip code and find somebody that's going to look at you from a different perspective. One of the best cortisol tests, and actually DHEA, which is an androgen, okay? So precursor to testosterone, DHEA is another hormone that is secreted from the adrenal glands. Increased stress is going to plummet DHEA first. It's going to elevate cortisol first until, of course, we run out of it, and then we start to be deficient in it. But it is the 4-point saliva cortisol test throughout the day. So cortisol has a nice kind of diurnal pattern, meaning it starts high in the morning and low at night. And the 4-point saliva cortisol test is something that's very, very, very good as an assessment tool, besides all the symptoms that you're going to see somebody having if they're adrenally fatigued.
Yeah, one of the things with some of our clients who have called this up and said, we're stuck in gear, is we've recommended to them the different tests because we've done those personally for ourselves. I'm now 44 years old. About 2 years ago, my dad passed away, and I would get my liver enzymes checked out, and I ended up going to a naturopath. He turned out to be now a really good friend of ours, and he has taught me so much about natural medicine and the different hormones in your body. And I believe it is the sticking point in weight loss. If something isn't going right, you definitely need to balance out different in your body. So can you just repeat that test again? So if anybody wants to write that down, they could write that down. It is
usually it's named the Adrenal Stress Index or Adrenal Stress Index. And it is a 4-point, so 4 different times throughout the day, a 4-point cortisol DHEA saliva test.
Yeah, and what they do is they test your saliva throughout the day, right, and do a saliva, I guess like a spit test, and it's kind of a pain in the butt, but it really gives you accurate figures where you'll notice really what's going on as far as cortisol levels throughout the day.
Yeah, as far as saliva... As far as saliva...
I'm sorry, I didn't want to interrupt. Go ahead, Dr. Holly. I'm sorry.
Oh, that's okay. Yeah, the phone keeps kind of breaking up, so I can't. As far as the saliva testing is concerned, cortisol and DHEA are measured very accurately with saliva. So it is one of those tests. I'm not a big fan of saliva tests across the board. And first of all, we can't treat tests. We have to treat people. Tests are just part of the picture. But this is a very important test, and it will tell you a lot of information. And so, yes, It is sometimes a pain because you do have to kind of collect your saliva sample, and you spit quite a bit in those little tubes for those 4 times, and you have to do them during the right time frames, but the payoff will be huge.
Yeah, it's a big, very good test. Definitely would recommend that. If you're just joining us, if you haven't already, we are on the phone. We are on the phone with Dr. Holly Lucille. We're talking all about hormones and weight loss. If you have already, please write down her website address. It's natrapause.com. That's www.natrapause.com. You can go to her personal website, drhollylucille.com, to find out more information about what Dr. Holly teaches and what she does for people. Dr. Holly, about the hormones, one of the biggest misconceptions, and I'll try to talk a little bit slower and a little softer so we don't get these breakups on the phone. But what about the hormone testosterone in women? I know that a lot of women tend to not really focus so much on having testosterone levels properly in their body. Where should they be, and is that important for weight loss?
So testosterone, because of its ability to what? It helps build lean muscle, and it's also an androgen, meaning it can help build. And so when we look at somebody and their hormone profile, you want to assess the catabolic wear and tear. And, I always tell people when I was studying for the medical boards and stuff, I would make things up. And so wear and tear, catabolic hormones like cortisol, okay, I think of wear and tear or tearing something apart. So those are catabolic. That starts to create a milieu in your body or a place in the body where you have a difficult time losing weight. You have a difficult time healing. You're sick frequently, okay? And anabolic or growth and healing, so testosterone is an anabolic hormone. It helps you there. And a lot of times in women, and in men quite honestly as well, but in women, it will be decreased, okay, from an optimal level at the woman's particular age, secondary to adrenal fatigue, because DHEA is a precursor, meaning testosterone is made from DHEA. It is a building block of testosterone. And so as soon as DHEA starts hitting the ground, then testosterone starts to be compromised as well. And you're going to have a very hard time because not only are you having a lot of cortisol, which is wear and tear, and inflammatory hormone, but you're also having a decrease in that balance. And so, testosterone is extremely important. It starts to decline naturally when we're hitting this normal hormonal phase of menopause. But if we are not, this is how I've always said it about our, and it's such an important point for your listeners because the built-in backup system for pre- and post-menopausal hormone production and andropause, quite honestly, andropausal hormone production is your adrenal glands. Your adrenal glands are supposed to step up to the plate when your ovaries and your testes take a well-deserved break. But if we're running high cortisol, high catecholamine, so totally stressful lifestyles, right, leading to a deficiency state, we're going to go through one of the most profound changes in times in our lives, and we're going to be behind the 8 ball. And that's what's happening across the board.
What are some of the things that a person can do right now to raise their testosterone levels, both naturally through diet and food going into their diet? Also, are there any supplements they can, and also is there anything else they can take or use to take it to maybe the next level?
Yeah. Okay. So I'm so sorry it's breaking up, and your sentences are getting cut off, but I think I'm piecing them together. But I think what you're asking me is, what can people do? How can we kind of gain control over this imbalance and perhaps increase, balance out sort of this catabolic wear and tear, increase anabolic healing by increasing testosterone? One of the things that I talk about on the Natrapause site, Natrapause is basically an audio series. It's just it's John Benson and I, he's a fitness author, talking through Hormones 101 and all stages of andropause and menopause, using diet and exercise, and appropriate supplementation. So it's all there. But for the most part, I mean, when I'm working with somebody and we're looking at an issue like this, I'm a firm believer in you have to have solid foundations. If somebody's coming to me for anything, especially as we're aging, especially when weight loss is involved, I'm thinking, okay, if I was a carpenter and you're asking me to help you build the house of your health, what is very important when you're building a house? It's the foundation. And if there's any cracks in somebody's foundation, and certainly the foundational things I think in life, we've got to look at diet. Now, I used to think that word was heavily connotated, and I didn't like it. But when you look up the word diet in the dictionary, it means habitual nourishment. How can you habitually nourish yourself? How do you habitually nourish yourself? Obviously, there are a lot of things out there, but for the most part, when you're adrenally fatigued or overly stressed, and this is an issue, you have to start eating. You have to eat breakfast. You have to eat smaller meals frequently throughout the day so that metabolism starts to rev up, that the blood sugar starts to remain stable. I encourage eating protein, clean, organic protein each time that you eat, so nuts, seeds, animal protein, eggs, and then increase whole foods and decrease refined foods. And I'm a big advocate these days because of all of the research of getting as much gluten out of your diet as comfortably possible for folks. I think that going gluten-free is a little bit aggressive for folks at the beginning, but if you can start looking at alternatives and go slowly, diet is one of them. Sleep is another. Exercise is another. Go ahead.
I think I've gotten rid of the echo. Can you hear me better now?
Very much, yes.
Okay, awesome. Can you elaborate on going gluten-free and why you feel that?
Yeah, well, the studies have been indexing for a while. There is in gluten, there's what's called wheat germ agglutinin. It's basically intrinsically inflammatory, okay? Its technical name is WGA, wheat germ agglutinin. It's been noted as an endocrine disruptor or a hormone disruptor. And so one of the reasons that it's so prevalent in our society is because a lot of the grains that we use in America are genetically modified and heavily agricultured, and so it is something that we're having a very difficult time digesting, and it's leading to many, many health concerns. And so I have had such clinical success across the board in many different aspects of people's lives when they get off gluten for the most part and really start to learn about alternatives. Their symptoms abate, and they feel a whole heck of a lot better.
That's great. That's excellent. And do you have any recommendations on anything somebody could read up on for something like that?
Sure. There's a really wonderfully built site with science-based evidence that I've been using, and I'm a sponsor of, only because I just think that they're doing such great work in indexing all this, but it's called greenmedinfo.com. So green, med as an M-E-D, info, info.com. And then truly, on Facebook there's many gluten-free pages, and, I always, Mark, like to kind of nip it in the bud. I always tell people, too, just because, people will get onto these fat-free phases, right, or gluten-free now is kind of becoming popular, and that's fine, and I think the education should be there. But I always remind people that a bag of cookies, even though it was gluten-free, was still a bag of cookies, A bag of cookies, just because they were organic, whatever, are still a bag of cookies, and we need to not rationalize our poor behaviors with very seductive things like that.
Well, that makes a lot of sense. Now, I want to move on to another hormone because we're going pretty fast on this call. So far we've talked about testosterone. We've also talked about cortisol. DHEA, you really kind of just touched on. How do you feel about taking a DHEA supplement to help with DHEA levels?
Yeah,
I know that it's still one of the few
actually
on the
think
market.
it's a great question. It's really important for folks to understand that I think the way that I look at supplements is if somebody had a financial income that wasn't meeting their needs, they would have to supplement their income, right? I look at the body and the hormones in the exact same way. If we're so out of balance and supplementation can be appropriate, and it can be targeted. I think it's the supplementation and medication without any thought process and or exit strategy sometimes that gets us into trouble. DHEA actually can be supplemented, I think, especially at lower dosages, really with great benefit. There's actually been some studies that will increase all sex steroid hormones. You can start at 5 milligrams. One of the things that we don't want, DHEA to do is metabolize, or testosterone to do, is metabolize into estrogens. There is an enzyme in our fat cells called aromatase, and aromatization of testosterone, or DHEA, is going to give you estrogens, and not good estrogens either, estrogens that are kind of inflammatory and that are provoking prostate tissue and breast tissue. And so we want to be mindful of the supplements, especially when they're hormones that we're taking. I always encourage good estrogen metabolism. So there's a product called diindolylmethane, or DIM, that usually if I have anybody on DHEA, I will also give concomitantly or along with. And DIM, I talk about DIM during Naturopause quite a bit. So, but DHEA, I think, to increase levels, especially if there's an adrenal component, especially if stress is an issue, is a very, very smart thing to do.
Yeah, I've taken DHEA personally for years, and small doses in the morning and at night, and I'm a huge proponent of it. So I'm glad you definitely feel the same way on that. Next hormone I want to talk about, more specifically, I kind of want to talk about the thyroid and everything involved with the thyroid.
Do you have a week?
Why is it so many people today have thyroid issues? Let's talk about that first of all.
Yeah, because if you look at the thyroid, and I'm going to try to sum this up, because quite honestly, I've been balancing sex steroid hormones in people for years, for a decade or more. When it comes to thyroid, it's a whole other ball of wax, and it is by far the quote-unquote hardest hormone, I believe, to understand. And you really need to be a big thinker to get into this. You really do, because quite honestly, if you look at the thyroid function, and I'm just going to dumb this down, you've got these two glands in your brain, okay? So the hypothalamus, pituitary, it starts there. All delivery messages to the thyroid. Now, there's a feedback loop that goes back up from the body, from the cells, because at the end of the day, active thyroid hormone is responsible for anaerobic and aerobic metabolism, okay, in every single cell in our body, every single cell. The way that your eyes work, the way that your liver works, the way that your muscles move, the way that your brain functions, every single cell. So at the end of the day, getting that active thyroid hormone down there is very important. But you've got a message first from the hypothalamus pituitary to the thyroid. Now, the thyroid then will make mostly inactive thyroid, which is T4, and it's a pro-hormone. There's no real receptor site for it. So you need building blocks. If you are iodine deficient, you're going to have a hard time. So it's kind of like a relay race. If you've ever watched the Olympics or a 440 track race, there's 4 different spots along the way, or actually 3, but 4 different spots where that baton can be dropped. And in the thyroid physiology, there's basically about 3 or 4 different spots for many different reasons, especially with modern-day influences like our environment and stress, where the baton can be dropped. And thyroid function tests that your doctor does are so outdated, and they are absolutely bunk for telling you about what's going on with your thyroid.
Let me just interrupt in this, because this drives me nuts, because I've done a boatload of research on the thyroid, mainly because we were trying to find a bovine thyroid product to introduce to our clients to really help. Explain this test that most doctors do, because I hear this all the time. My doctor says my thyroid is fine. What is that test?
Sure. So thyroid stimulating hormone, TSH, is the gold standard in the allopathic or conventional medicine community for thyroid tests. In my opinion, even though I'll look at it, I certainly think it's a bunk test for thyroid. It's a wonderful test to detect a pituitary tumor, but you're not going to get much information about the thyroid there, I promise you. And so, yes, and then also there's a thyroid panel. There's two things on that thyroid panel. They're very cheap, but they're cheap because they're not measuring anything. They're very outdated. One of the things, and the number one reason for an underfunctioning thyroid is actually an autoimmune disease, okay? And you've got to be able to stop an autoimmune process wherever you find it. So if you end up with Hashimoto's, and a lot of doctors won't even run the antibodies, so your TPO or thyroid peroxidase enzyme or there's another enzyme, you need to run those antibodies, and a lot of doctors don't do it because if they were high, they wouldn't. And I've talked to wonderful endocrinologists. They don't know what to do about it. From my perspective, the autoimmune issue usually is happening inside the gut, where there's dysbiosis, meaning candida overgrowth or bacterial overgrowth, or then leading to permeability issues, and it's because of people's poor diets. So we've got to be able to understand that. Now, I'm not done with the thyroid. I want to make sure we get a couple different things in here. So the TSH is definitely a bunk test, and a lot of people, and the range is different. The range, people go all the way up to 5. I like to see TSHs under 2 for the most part if I'm looking at them, but you really have to take into consideration free T3, free T4, and also the big picture, because T4 has to be peripherally converted into the active thyroid hormone. Then that T3, okay, that's converted mostly in the liver, some in the intestines, has to get into the cell. You've got to have appropriate levels of vitamin D to have that happen. And I'm not just talking about, once again, one click above rickets. A lot of doctors will look at that range, 21 to 100. If your vitamin D level is 22, they say you're fine. If you were in school, that's a failing grade. You're not fine, okay? You failed. And all the research with vitamin D levels is that we need it up between 60 and 80 for there to be optimal thyroid function. So vitamin D deficiency is a culprit as well. And then the other thing that I like to run is ferritin, and that's our iron storage. We need to get that up into the 90s, 110 for optimal thyroid function. And so any iron deficiency, that is going to also, people are on too much thyroid replacement. That will decrease endogenous production, and it will also decrease the responsiveness of the receptor sites. And also estrogen dominant or women that are on hormone therapy that of estrogen based will also actively decrease thyroid function. So there is so much to think about when it comes to the thyroid. And the last thing I'll say about it is that it will definitely underfunction secondarily to either having too much cortisol or too little cortisol as well. Those are all, so there's tons of different things that can really compromise thyroid physiology and then at the end of the day lead to a decrease in metabolism, whether it's the way that your hair is growing, whether you're moving your bowel movements, right? That's one of the big signs of constipation is fatigue, weight gain, inability to lose weight. Big things to think about.
Now, what is your take on the at-home temperature test in the morning on that?
Sure. So the basal body temperature test has been around. Dr. Broda Barnes basically brought that to the forefront and has been using that for a bit. Now, I actually really like the basal body temperature test, and what I have people do is usually get a mercury thermometer, lay it on their nightstand. When they wake up in the morning, don't even open your eyes, under the arm. I like to get it 3 days in a row. For the women, I use it the second, third, fourth day of their menstrual cycle if we can get it. I love the basal body temperature because, number one, it's a sign of vitality, right? A sign of metabolism, and it's a functional medicine test that can be done. It's cheap and it tells you part of the picture. Okay, it's a piece of the puzzle. But the reason I love it so much is that when we start working on somebody's thyroid after we fix what we found out what's going wrong because we followed the story, that temperature will start to come up. And so I have them take their temperature again, and it's quite fun for folks to see not only that they're feeling better, but to really see that they're getting better.
What should the temperature, I mean, typically I've been told, and again, I might be wrong on this, but I'll let you share it, what temperature should it be? And if it's below that as an average, then, when does the red flag go up?
Yeah, so
in other words, if somebody tonight could say, get off this phone, grab their thermometer, and start checking over the next 3 days, what should it be? And if it's not, what should they do next?
So 98.6 we all know as sort of the normal body temperature. Now, temperature can certainly be affected by many different things, so we take that into consideration. Anything really that's hovering below 97.8 as an average, we really want to take a look at hypometabolism and the reasons why somebody's experiencing that.
Because that's one of the first things I do when somebody emails me and says, okay, we're stuck in gear, I don't know what to do. I say, check your temperature for 3 days before you go out, get out of bed, before you do anything, and we try to find an average from there, and then we start working from there.
Perfect.
So we definitely want to know if that thyroid is not working. Now, what is your take, because there are obviously things like different prescription drugs, which I don't want to get into names on here, but what is your take on the natural alternatives, things like Armor T by Forest Pharmaceuticals? How do you feel about that as a solution or something similar to it? And if you could explain to everybody
what it is. Whether it's natural or synthetic, we are doing the same thing with the thyroid as we did with Premarin, 10, 20 years ago. We're just offering thyroid replacement therapy. We're offering a hormone. And 1 to 3 things happen, or sometimes all 3, when you give an exogenous or outside-the-body hormone. Number 1, it decreases endogenous production, okay? Number 2, it increases binding globulin. So and a lot of people are dosing at super physiological doses. And so the binding, it binds up. And so we're going to, and then it's hard to then regulate. And number 3, as I said, it'll either decrease the receptor sites or the responsiveness of the receptor sites. And so giving too big of a dose of thyroid hormone or being dependent on it really will get somebody hooked on thyroid replacement. And we didn't really fix and understand why especially a normal, fairly normal, otherwise healthy person was underfunctioning in the first place. And so, and I also really like to be quite careful about feeding the marketing kind of circle of natural thyroid because, and there's different names out there. It's not natural. It is a porcine. It comes from pigs, and it's natural for pigs, and that's about it. It is different than synthetic. Synthetic are basically bioidentical. They're made with synthetic ingredients and fillers and such, but only usually use T4. Okay, the number 1 sort of gold standard for underfunctioning thyroid, and the prescription will be for only use T4. That means that we are counting on our bodies to turn it into that active hormone. The more natural that you say, or the porcine, will have a blend of T4 and T3. And sometimes people will be able to get a little bit more help from that because the body isn't dependent on getting, especially if there's a conversion issue. A lot of times that there's a selenium deficiency, if there's a zinc deficiency, if there's heavy metals like mercury, which will bind up selenium. And so I think they're important, but once again, as any hormone replacement or hormone therapy, you've really got to be able to think in a big picture way.
I definitely, absolutely agree with you on that. But that was a great point on the thyroid. It is such a important role in our metabolism. So, are there any foods or anything else that we can do to help get the thyroid working properly? I know we had talked about some of the tests.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, is there any recommendations on what somebody could do naturally to get their thyroid working more efficiently? Or is that something that's just when the ship is sinking, you really got to take drastic measures?
No, absolutely not. So for the most part, hypoallergenic, meaning low antigen, high anti-inflammatory, so eating really well. Sometimes I'll put somebody on a blood type diet for about 45 days to rule out food sensitivities. Also, same thing, blood sugar stabilized, nourish yourself, increase whole organic foods, decrease pesticide use, maybe go through a nice detoxification program with somebody. Make sure vitamin D is up there. Obviously, Brazil nuts are very, very high in selenium, or oysters, selenium, Brazil nuts, zinc. We want to get those nice foods in. Iodine, tons of people are deficient in iodine, and so getting those sea vegetables, hopefully that you can source from a really clean, manufacturer is very important. Getting that steady. Iodine is a mineral that, and basically tyrosine So T, and either it's 3 molecules of iodine or 4 molecules of iodine, those are the building blocks of the thyroid hormone. And a lot of people are deficient in iodine, and so and we don't sort of absorb, we don't store iodine like we do other minerals. Like ferritin I mentioned was our iron storage. Iodine we need to get in on a consistent basis, and so lots of folks aren't. And so very, very important to mind that.
Well, here's what I want everybody to definitely get out of this call is that there's a lot that could underlying be going wrong that could be keeping you stuck in gear. There just could be some simple things. I don't want to overwhelm everybody on this call, but I want you to understand that, look, if you're stuck in gear,
we've kind of gone through a lot.
Different things. There's different things that you can do to find out to get this process moving forward. When just diet and exercise alone aren't doing it, there's other underlying causes of it. And this call, I'm hopefully helped you have an active mind to maybe listen to it. We're going to post this call very quickly on our website so that you can listen to this again. Now, I want to talk a little bit about this Naturopause program that you have. Can you touch on that? Because we went through just a little bit in this short period of time. Maybe you can kind of tell a little bit about what this program is on your website so people could get more information on it.
Sure. Thanks, Mark. I mean, it's naturopause.com. Go ahead.
No, go ahead. I interrupted. I apologize.
No, I think, it's our little connection. So Naturopause, N-A-T-U-R-A, pause, and P-A-U-S-E.com. John Benson, who's a fitness author, he wrote Fit Over 40. He and I were, he actually called me out of the blue, and he asked about this one ingredient. And I was a consultant in the natural products industry, and we started talking. We started to talk a lot, and we had a lot of things in common regarding this whole complete hormone conversation. And we really both believe that diet and exercise could lead to healthy menopause and healthy and ideal andropause. And so it's not a product. It's not something that you take. It's actually an audio series. And we kind of split it through like Hormones 101, just to really ground people on what the heck is a hormone in the first place and why are they so darn popular these days. And then we went into different sections like food and the importance of exercise, and then also appropriate supplementation. And there's also some great information on other plants and products that can help increase testosterone. And like I said, and like you reminded us, you increase testosterone, those androgens, you're going to increase lean muscle mass, and you're going to be able to have really that ideal weight, and you're going to be able to reach and maintain that ideal weight so much quicker. So it's just kind of a very comprehensive back-to-back discussion between John and I about all of these points. You can create real, healthy, normal hormonal changes that aren't so normal because they're so symptomatic in our modern day.
And also, one of the things I didn't cover is you're also the author of Creating and Maintaining Balance, which is your book, and that's also something that comes with it also. Am I correct in saying that?
I believe in Naturopause, if you order the Naturopause, you're going to get my book. Or you can, if you just want to take a look at my book, it's on that website, www.drhollylucille.com. I think for like $12.95 or something like that.
I would recommend definitely getting the audio programs because, I mean, we covered so much. I believe that you get into such specific detail. Unfortunately, our traditional doctors today aren't giving us the information we need. Not that they don't want to. It's just such a number-crunching business when it comes to going into a doctor and out of a doctor.
I think that's an important point. Yeah, and that is really an important point because, even though I get frustrated, and I get frustrated mostly because it's the people, it's the consumers of health care, and this is a service industry that end up paying because, I fell and shattered my shoulder late last year and had surgery on January 4th and was very thankful for those doctors and of painkillers and something to help me sleep. And as I recovered, I think it's there's places for everything, and there's value in all systems of medicine, including allopathic medicine. But I think when you're looking at somebody from a prevention or wellness or, hey, I want to feel great, not about just being well or being on 6 or 7 meds as I grow old. I want to know why. I want to be empowered. I want to understand about my health. think it's really important to go and seek out somebody a little bit more comprehensive so you can become your own primary caregiver.
I think that is an incredible point, that you definitely share so much knowledge in this business, and you have to get the knowledge firsthand to really start living a healthier lifestyle. Only diet and exercise are only going to take you so far. So the website for Dr. Holly is, I'm going to give it again, it is Natrapause. That's NATRAPAUSE.com. Please go to her site, make sure you see what she has, get the education, and you'll definitely be able to take some action from there. And if you're in a sticking point right now with your weight or your health, or you're sick and tired of being tired, the information she shared with you is something that we 100% believe in, big time. Otherwise, I would not have had Dr. Holly on this call. So, Dr. Holly, is there anything else you want to add or take away from this call?
I really appreciate the opportunity, and I think I'm at the end of the day a consumer advocate. My passion lies in people feeling well and doing anything that they can to empower themselves to really take those steps, do what it takes. And so, thanks for all that you do, and especially for having.
Hello?
Yeah, are you there?
I'm sorry, I thought I lost you for a second there. Okay. These wonderful phone lines tonight are driving me nuts.
I know.
It's been literally my honor to have you on this phone. I mean, with your background and everything you do, I hope our VIP coaching clients here enjoy this call. They listen to it and they take some action and start living that healthier lifestyle that all of us deserve today. So, Dr. Holly, I want to thank you again for being on this call. Please go to Dr. Holly's website when you get a chance, as soon as possible, if not after this call, at least first thing tomorrow. Take advantage of what she has to offer for our clients. And I want to thank you again for being on the call, Dr. Holly, and have a great night.